I don't think anyone expected Mathieu Olivier to have the season he had last year, but he's got a shiny new contract for it. Can he live up to that contract? Let's discuss on today's Locked On Blue Jackets.
You're Locked On Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am, as always, your host, Jay Foster, here to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly about your favorite team, and mine, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Before we get things started, I want to thank everyone for making this your first listen of the day every single day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms and over on YouTube. Let's talk about Mathieu Olivier. I know I said yesterday that we were going to talk about Denta Matejchuk today, and I lied. Sorry about that. No, someone commented asking about Mathieu Olivier and his lack of a Gordie Howe hat trick, and so I was like, hey, let's look at Mathieu Olivier. So I did a little bit of digging into some of his underlying stats, things like that, and I thought let's talk about it, because obviously he signed that. I was going to say big contract, not necessarily a big contract. Definitely a more sizable contract than I saw him getting, this time last year, right? Like, I fully assumed, and maybe that's on me, that he was going to be trade deadline bait. I know that the team loves having him around. Clearly, Don Waddell loves having him. I know that he actually went on record, I think not long after he signed that contract extension, where he basically said, yeah, when I was in charge over in Carolina, I tried really hard to get the Blue Jackets to give me Olivier, and they wouldn't do it. So now that he's on my team, I'm really happy about it. But I wanted to talk about the season that he had. I want to talk about, is he going to live up to that contract? What can we expect from Mathieu Olivier next season? Like, is he going to have the same role? Is he going to get less of a role? Like, there's a lot of moving parts, right? Some of which I kind of talked about a little bit yesterday. But let's talk about the season that he had last season, because I was blown away by it. I think, what did he have? Like, 5 goals in his first 10 games of the season or something like that. He started the season really, really hot. He had 4 goals in his first 8 games, according to this. Yeah. Plus 2 assists. So 6 points in his first 8 games. His career high previous to this season, in points was 15. And his previous career high in goals was 5. And he hit that about a month into the season, I feel like. Again, 6 points in his first 8 games of the season, already almost halfway to his career high, right? He ended up finishing the season with 18 goals and 32 points, which more than triple his goal total. More than double his career high in points. And it wasn't even that he was shooting stupidly high. His shooting percentage was high. He shot at 16.2%. His career high is 11. And that's, including that 16.2. Previous years, he had 9% the year before that, 7% the year before that. 12% in 2020, 2021, and in other 2 seasons, he had a shooting percentage of 0, because he had 11 shots total over 18 games with the Predators in 2019, 20, and 21, 22, and did not score on them. So, he has 66 career points now, 31 career goals. So he got more than, he got 5 more than double his entire career output to this point last season, which is just wild, right? And part of it was that he just had a good season, right? I think he started hot and kept it up. I think he had better line mates than he's had previous years. It helped. He played a ton more. So he played 14 and a half minutes on average this season per game. His previous high was 11:38. So, almost 3 minutes more per game than his previous career high. He also played all 82 games as well, whereas, again, his previous career high was 66 games, The season before last, the 23-24 season, he had 54 games. He spent a bunch of the season as basically a healthy scratch, right? So he was a guy that they kind of brought in when they needed to throw their weight around, right? This season, again, I don't know whether it's, obviously there was injuries to key guys. They lost some guys, obviously, losing Johnny Gaudreau. They traded away Patrick Laine, losing Jenner to injury early. Like, Olivier kind of had to play up from where he played last season. So the season before last, he was mostly a fourth line guy, that again played about 10 minutes a night, and mostly just kind of took a lot of penalties. Now he took a lot of penalties as well this year. I'm not saying that he didn't, but he was not a guy that they looked at to be an offensive option. This season, I don't know whether it was that Dean Everson came in and was like, oh, this guy's got something, right? Or if it was just kind of necessity. He played up and down the lineup. Like, I don't have the numbers directly in front of me right now, but he played, like, he spent a bunch of the time. The previous season, he was basically exclusively fourth line, right? This season, he was almost exclusively third line, but he did play on the second line every now and again, right? Like, he didn't play a ton of time out in the top six, but he did play in the top six. I'm just looking for the numbers right now. So his most common line mates were Zach Aston Reese and Justin Danforth. He played 284 minutes with them. Played a bunch of the time with Zach Aston Reese and Cole Sillinger as well. Played with Voronkov and Sillinger. Played with Kent Johnson and Sillinger. That, I believe, was the third line that they started the season with. And again, like that's a great position for Olivier to be in. Played with Aston Reese again, Del Bell Blues. Played with Aston Reese and Corrali. I'm convinced that he played on the second line. Yeah, he played 41 minutes, which is probably, 2.5 games-ish with Zach Aston Reese and Adam Fantilli. Now, that probably is a comment on he shouldn't have been there as opposed to he was there. But, he did play some second line time is my point here, right? So he was put in a position to succeed that he hadn't ever really been put in previous to this season, right? And I think he stepped up. I don't think it was necessarily a challenge. I don't think this was Dean Everson saying, like, hey, we want more from you. I think it was just a case of Dean Everson was like, hey, let's try this. Like, Dean Everson tried a bunch of stuff this season. Cole Sillinger got a bunch of penalty kill time. Ken Johnson started the season with penalty kill time, and that kind of faded away, but bringing in Luca Del Ballou and playing him in the top six as opposed to, calling up your best AHL players and then playing them for 8 minutes on the fourth line and sending them back down after 2 games, right? Just kind of a breath of fresh air. And I think Everson really responded well to Olivier. By all accounts, great guy. The entire team seems to love him, You can almost count, like, you could put money on Mathieu Olivier gets in a fight. After the game, every single post-game after he gets in a fight, Ollie really riled us up and he got us going, and that's why we ended up winning the game, right? Like, I would love to know what the record was for the Blue Jackets when Mathieu Olivier got in a fight and when Mathieu Olivier had a fighting major. I think that would be really interesting to look up. And I think he just kind of, again, he took advantage. I don't think this was him being put in a position to succeed on purpose. I think he just kind of found himself there and was like, well, why not, right? Do I think he's going to do it again next year? Yes and no is the short answer. We'll take a quick break and then we'll get into the slightly longer answer, which is I think it depends on a couple of things and it really could go either way. So let's explore that in just a second here on Locked On Blue Jackets. First, I'm going to tell you about Monarch Money. Do you ever wish that managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings, planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO. It gives you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It is a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. You can basically track how much you're spending on certain things like takeout, like Netflix, for example, and other streaming services. And my budgeting for the little treats that I buy when when I did a good job on my day, or like made a phone call that I didn't want to make, I will buy myself a little treat. And it turns out that the little treat economy is unsustainable, according to Monarch. So they have saved me money now that I have realized just how much money I am spending on like candy bars, for example. Do what I did. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for 50% off your first year. Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jackets. We're talking about Mathieu Olivier today. Is he going to live up to this contract? Like that? So the contract that he signed was, I believe, like the back half of the season. It was after the trade deadline. I want to say. And he signed a 6-year, $3 million AAV contract. He's under contract until 2031 right now. I believe he is, he's the second, he's going to be the second latest tenured Blue Jacket. David Severson is also there until 2031. Ivan Provorov is now there until 2032. So longest tenured forward by a couple of years. And I mean, it's tough to say that he didn't earn a raise, right? I didn't think it would be 6 years, and I didn't think it would be $3 million. But the way that he played this year, the question becomes, was this a contract year outburst, or was this he got put into a new situation and suddenly became a much more versatile player, right? Because like this is the thing, he was scoring real goals, and that sounds mean, but you know how sometimes guys not necessarily pad their stats, but sometimes you will see, no disrespect to James Van Riemsdyk when I say this, James Van Riemsdyk has made a career out of standing in front of the net and deflecting pucks in, right? And I'm not saying that that's not a skill. I think he found his niche and it worked for him, right? But, Mathieu Olivier scored a lot of goals that were just snipes, right? Like he was coming down the ice, and I don't know. I'm pretty sure almost all of his goals were scored on like the initial shot, right? Some of them were the result of just like incredible passes. Like there was one pass that I still remember by Cole Sillinger early-ish in the season, that he was behind the net and somehow got the puck out to Olivier, who was standing about 6 inches away from the goalie, and he just like boop batted it in. But for the most part, like he scored real, actual hockey goals, right? Not like greasy goals, as they call them, but like real proper hockey goals, which is fun. And it does make me think that there's something there. I don't think he's going to score 18 goals again next season, but, I think that we have kind of come to a point where you expect 10 to 15 goals out of Mathieu Olivier. To me, feels great, right? 10 to 15 goals for someone you're paying $3 million seems, honestly, kind of ideal, right? Like, and I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but that's about what I expect from Mathieu Olivier. He had a previous career high of 5, and he scored 18 this season, so he probably comes in somewhere in the middle of those, right? The question becomes, like, what do they do with Olivier? And we talked about this a little bit in yesterday's episode, right, where I kind of broke down what the roster could look like. We looked at what the bottom 6 could look like, and there is room for Mathieu Olivier to be that third-line player, to play with guys like Jenner and Charlie Coyle, and probably put up a decent number of points on that line, right? There's also a world where he goes on to the 4th line with Aston Reese and Isaac Lundestrom. My guess is if he plays on that 4th line, he's not going to put up as many points, right? Just because Zach Aston Reese doesn't put up a ton of points, and Isaac Lundestrom goes out of his way to make sure that no one has any points ever, right? So it really does depend, again, I find myself, it all comes down to Igor Chinikov, right? Is he in the top 6? Is he in the lineup at all? Because I do feel like what happens with Chinikov really does dictate what happens to Olivier, because for me, he's the guy that you push down, right? Like, if Chinikov comes into the lineup, then Sillinger gets pushed down, and that probably pushes Olivier down onto the 4th line, right? Which is not a bad place for him to be, but I will be interested to see, the Blue Jackets got deeper in the bottom 6, right? Bringing in Coyle and Lundestrom, there's your 2 centers, right? Now, Olivier is not in risk of losing his job necessarily, right? They didn't bring in anyone to replace to replace Olivier, right? They brought in Danforth replacement, they brought in a Corelli replacement, a James Van Riemsdyk replacement, etc., right? But they didn't really bring in anyone who does what Olivier does, but better. And I think that probably means that his position in the lineup is safe. Again, I think Dean Everson really likes him, really likes utilizing him. The other thing as well with Olivier that I didn't mention when we were talking about, like, again, unusual things is he also played on the penalty kill last season, which is kind of wild because he's so rarely done that, right? He played on the penalty kill a little bit last season, so the 2023-24 season and the 22-23 season. He played about 60 minutes combined in those two seasons. This season he played 72 minutes on the penalty kill, which is not a ton, granted, but is not, like, it's not nothing, right? And he had a short-handed goal, had another assist, did, honestly, pretty well in terms of the penalty kill itself. Like, he was fine. He was effective, right? That's not nothing. And again, I think Everson likes guys that are competent on the penalty kill. So I think that's why, a lot of the early season, I felt like, was him just kind of throwing guys at the penalty kill to see what worked, right? Like, Fantilli got early penalty time. Cole Sillinger got early penalty kill time, I should say. Cole Sillinger did. Kent Johnson did. Olivier did. Like, all of these guys that I'm not used to seeing on the penalty kill got PK time. Sean Corelli got way less penalty kill time than previous seasons, which tells me that Everson liked a lot of other guys on the penalty kill better than him. And Olivier was one of those guys. So again, I think if he can continue to be effective on the penalty kill, I think that's a great sign for him continuing to get ice time. And like, shockingly, he's actually way better defensively on the penalty kill than he is at even strength, which is very funny. But is he going to get third line minutes, fourth line minutes? I think anything above third line is probably a stretch unless, knock on wood, terrible things happened and everyone gets injured. And we do have to go with second line Mathieu Olivier in kind of a break glass in case of emergency type thing. But like, as it stands right now, I kind of have him on I still have him on the third line with Coyle and Jenner. And I think that is a really good position for him to be in. Jenner was obviously missed a lot of the season, but if he can stay healthy, he's a very reasonable, like, middle six guy, right? He is a great third liner. Charlie Coyle, I think, increases the skill at center or the level at center, and that's not, I liked Cole Sillinger there a lot. I still think that his future is like a middle six center in this team. But if you have to move him to the wing, let him learn from Coyle in the way that, Fantilli learned from Monahan this season, let's say, then there's something there as well, right? But if you can put Olivier on a line with other players that are not grinders, he tends to play to the level of his line mates, right? He's a really great... So I talked a lot kind of through the season and earlier in the offseason about, like, sometimes lines just need a third guy, right? Like the Monahan-Marchenko line just needs a third guy on it. And if that third guy is Voronkov, if it's Chinakov, if it's Jenner, whoever, right? Mathieu Olivier is a great third guy. And I'm not saying that he is going to be that guy on that, that top line left wing, but for the bottom six, he is a guy that has shown that he can play skilled. Again, 18 goals. I still don't think he scores 18 goals again this season, but if we get 10 to 15 from him, then that's a win in my books. And he's not afraid to, mix it up and get a little bit messy, right? Like, I think he probably likes it when it gets a little bit messy. So I think probably we'll see him thrive in different situations based on the situation he's in, right? Like, if he plays on that third line, we'll probably see more points come from Olivier. If he plays on the fourth line, my guess is more penalty killing, and also probably more punching, which, I don't love. I'm not going to get into the the concept of fighting in the NHL. That's not what this episode is about. I would much rather have him scoring goals than punching faces, especially now that we've seen he can score goals, right? He's not slow, not the best skater in the world, but he makes it work. Like, he's got all of the tools to be a very decent third line player. He just sometimes decides that what he wants to do is fight, which that's his right. More power to him. But what are we gonna get from Olivier next season, right? Are you gonna get the Olivier we had last season, or are we gonna get an Olivier more like the previous seasons? I certainly hope that we get an Olivier like the season we've just had. My guess is probably somewhere in between, a little of column A, a little of column B, right? So he is kind of who he is, right? Except who he is actually, there are two wolves inside Mathieu Olivier. One of them punches and one of them scores goals, and we'll see who wins. Again, I still think that we probably see a little bit of regression from Olivier. He overachieved massively this season. I think many people on the team overachieved. I think of all of the players, like, obviously, I think we're going to see more growth from guys like Fantilli, like, Johnson, Matejchuk, etc., the young guys. If Olivier can kind of stay about where he is, that's a win to me, right? Like, that's kind of, if you get 30 points out of Mathieu Olivier next season, then you are laughing, right? Like, that contract is great if he can do it every year for the next 6 years. I think probably he doesn't do it every year for the next 6 years. He's not as old as I always think he is. He's only about 27 or 28, so he's going to be 34 when the contract finishes. I think the type of style he plays is not like super conducive to aging well. So they really make sure that they got to make sure that they get bang for their buck for the next 2, maybe 3 seasons. And I think Olivier is going to be one of those guys that they like to have in the playoffs as well, right? Like, I'm not saying that he's going to turn into Sam Bennett and score, 15 goals in the regular season and then 15 goals in the playoffs, and win the Conn Smythe. But he feels like a player that you want to have around in the playoffs, right? He is not afraid to get mixed up. He can add a little bit of offense if you need him to, and no one is going to mess with guys like Johnson if they know that Olivier is going to be floating around the next shift, right? Again, regardless of how you feel about fighting, Mathieu Olivier is, I think, almost universally decided as like the best fighter and the toughest guy in the NHL right now. Like, I think that, you could make some arguments for some other guys, but, I think a lot of guys, and we saw this last season and the season before a little bit as well, is that you would see guys approach him, and like young guys as well. Like, I think Matt Rempe is a really good example of this, of like, he was desperate to have his face caved in by Olivier, because that's the thing to do, right? To prove your toughness, you fight Mathieu Olivier. It's just very funny that, again, 18 goals this season. I don't know how many fighting majors off the top of my head, but I can find that out real quick. So he had 129 penalty minutes, and I believe, according to hockeyfights.com anyway, this season he had 15 fights, and 2 of those were in the same game, hilariously. There was a game against Calgary where everyone lost their minds and decided that everyone was fighting. Olivier, 2 fighting majors on the night. And so he's got 18 goals, and he's got 15 fights. And he had 14 assists as well, I think it was. Extremely funny to me that somehow all of those got spread out throughout the season. So we didn't actually get a Gordie Howe hat trick at all, which I assume everyone knows what a Gordie Howe hat trick is, but it's a goal, a fight, and an assist all in the same game. Zach Werenski got a Gordie Howe hat trick this season. Mathieu Olivier did not. So that's the big question for me going into next season, I guess, is will Mathieu Olivier finally get that elusive Gordie Howe? Because here's the thing, he doesn't have one in his career yet, which made sense, again, because of the fact that he had about 25 points total in 5 seasons previous to this. This season, 32 points, 15 fights, and somehow did not get a goal, an assist, and a fight all in the same night. So that's my question for this is will he get it done next season? And how wild will Twitter go if and when he actually manages to do it? So that's kind of all I've got for today on Mathieu Olivier. Tomorrow, I think we will talk about Denton Matejchuk, who is, the man that I was going to talk about tonight. But we'll talk about him tomorrow. Thank you for listening, for making this your first listen of the day every single day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms and over on YouTube. You can find me on Blue Sky at JAKOBFORSTEI. You can find the show at LO_Blue Jackets on Twitter and LO-Blue Jackets over on Blue Sky. Comments, questions, criticisms, drop me an email at lockedonbluejackets@gmail.com. And until tomorrow, make sure you stay locked on.